Avengers! Assemble.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Excelsior, the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers podcast. Jack, is it soon to be the Marvel's Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy podcast?
Oh, it certainly will be.
Oof, yes, it's going to be an exciting day when we record next week. I'm your director, Christian Buckley, joined as always by the Apex legend, Jack Martin.
Excelsior. E3 is firmly upon us, and the hype is real.
Yep, it sure is. This episode's going up in the middle of kickoff day, so for those that are watching this episode, hello. We're probably live at the moment as well, but I doubt you care about Ubisoft because this is all about Marvel's Avengers. Do you see a world where Ubisoft ever does a Marvel game?
Oh yeah. You see the bones of a Ubisoft game in SpiderMan.
Yeah.
Right? And so yeah, I think that just makes a hell of a lot of sense.
You know, I'm very surprised it hasn't happened yet, you know?
Yeah. Cuz Ubisoft's making a Star Wars game, right?
Yeah, so they got John Drake's number, they got this Disney connection, you know? It's just interesting to me. And you know, for the longest time, I always imagined Ubisoft would make something like a Punisher game. I feel like that fits their vibe, like open world Hell's Kitchen Punisher. I feel like that's them.
That's a good call. That's a good call.
So who knows? Maybe we just get a surprise Marvel game at Ubisoft tomorrow. We will have to wait and see. Maybe it's not just Square.
That'd be wild.
But how you doing?
I'm doing good. A little baseball update, of course, from me. There was the weirdest baseball game last night.
I caught some of it, yeah.
Yeah, the Red Sox and the Astros. Just bizarre plays that you never see. The infield fly rule was incorrectly called in the outfield. Just weird stuff going on, and that was bizarre. And I'm glad I started really heavily watching baseball this year because that was something.
Yeah.
But how you doing?
Doing good. It is chilly today. You know, took care of a haircut for E3, so
nice.
The hair is no longer long. I've been rocking some tank tops for some recordings, but today I'm cozied up with a cardigan, windows open, because you know it's like 50 degrees today after all this summer heat, and I'm sick of it already.
Yeah, it's really vacillating right now. We're not really stuck on a certain. It's like going from like really hot to, 50s. That's wild.
Yeah, and you know, Jack, it really, I think, is replicating our opinions and feelings on this Avengers game because we got some stuff to talk about this week. Some honestly really exciting small tweaks, I think, for the game. Some bad news that broke a while ago that I think we should talk about. And of course, we do have some very exciting Marvel stuff on the grand scheme because Loki, the latest MCU Disney Plus show, has arrived. Episode 1 is here. We're going to do a full breakdown, full review, full impressions in the back half of the show. But first, we'll kick off the way we always do with Fury's report. This week, for your low power level mission, guaranteed gear for your low levels, which, man, how many of you are left? I don't know, because we're pushing up on a year. I did see the game was like $10 the other day, and I sent it to another friend of mine, and they're like, okay, I'll buy it.
Yeah, the optimum price for this game.
Exactly. So the low power level missions are for them. This week, it is more than Inhuman. Do you know what this is?
It certainly involves the Inhumans, and that's the extent of my knowledge on that one.
You nailed it. The high power level mission is Out of the Shadows, which is not And We're Back, or the other one about the Avengers taking the spotlight or something like that. I don't know what this is.
Who knows? I should play these each week just to, know what these are. But I have no real reason to. So I don't think I ever will.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's not a priority for them. You know, I think for the longest time, for like 30 out of these 41 weeks of post-launch conversations, they had the low power, high power harm room challenge listed at the top of the blog. And maybe like 7 weeks ago, they swapped it. So, like, it just fits our flow better. So, clearly it's not a priority for the game. But for us, it's a nice way to kick off the show, you know? It's nice.
Yeah. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just, it's nice to have. It's nice to have these things because you now can replay the campaign, but even if you don't want to go through a whole campaign just to play, like, one mission, there is like a little bit of randomness to, oh, this mission's back in rotation. So for those that care, it's nice to know.
For sure. And if you care about collecting your comic sets, this week, if you do the Harm Room Challenge, the lower high level version of it, you'll get Incredible Hulk from 2001, issue number 25. But the
And if you do care, I would love to have you sound off in the comments.
Please, yeah. Who's like waiting for that final drop that they need? Who needs their one last comic to complete all the sets? I'm very curious. I'm proud of you if you're doing that, but yeah, it couldn't be me.
No, I'm with you.
This week, though, the marketplace has some interesting stuff. Hulk is featured there as well as the comic. But, Jack, are you a fan? Let me hear your take on the marketplace this week.
I'm both happy and very upset with the marketplace this week.
Okay,
because
let's hear.
So in the War Table blog they have here, they detailed that the steampunk outfits are the new like team outfit set for the Avengers, which on the whole I think looks really cool. Obviously with the steampunk aesthetic, you have like some gold trim, some railroad looking dudes and stuff like that. So that I think looks cool. What really upsets me is this is either the first time I've noticed this or the first time that they've actually successfully done this. I've always been a big complainer about any of Captain America's redesigns because the shield consistently stays the generic shield design. They redesigned it this time. It's a gold star. There's gold trim where the white usually is, and there's some weird little red patterns where the red usually is, which I think looks really cool, but is emblematic of the fact that they didn't redesign the shield for any other team outfits, and it just like really stood out as weird. So I'm very confused why that wasn't the case.
Agreed. You pointed this out to me the other day, right? I think we were finishing up the Summer Games Fest reactions, and we were just talking on Discord, and we saw the update, and like the thing that hurts me the most is like literally in the campaign, the first time you see Captain America again, you know, after his A-Day fiasco, after he's half naked in space pants, when you get his suit, like his default campaign suit, it's the stealth suit, and he doesn't have the stealth shield. It's because the thing is, it's the same shield, it's the same dimensions, it looks like it's the same decal size and ratio amongst all the rings in the star. Like, it's just a paint job. So like literally, like I feel like if that's the one you get in the campaign is the stealth suit and you don't do the stealth shield, it's a weird choice, but maybe that'll come in an update down the line. Who knows?
Yeah, I remember one time you were talking about this specifically with characters' hair because of the Avengers Endgame outfits fiasco for some characters, where you could have an outfit and maybe go in and refine some of the finer details. So go in with Captain America in this example and wear the steampunk outfit and then just go in and change the shield to whatever shield you want. I feel like that would be cool. I don't think we'll ever see that, but that could be a really interesting... Like, I've been playing Mass Effect, for instance, and you can have like the N7 armor set in Mass Effect 2, but you can also go in and further refine that and be like, well, I want to wear these, bracers or this, chest piece and stuff like that. So I think that'd be cool. I don't think we'll ever see that because it's such a niche thing. I don't think anyone really cares that much about it.
Well, that's the interesting thing because on a dev stream a while back, CD did say that they are looking into and developing weapon skins. And I would think that the weapon skin specifically for Cap is tied to the shield. You know, like Mjolnir, maybe we could get the MCU Mjolnir as a weapon skin. Maybe like a more classic God of War design for Mjolnir as well, like the one you would see in some novelty store that likes Norse mythology. Like, I think there's some variety options there we could get into. And seeing this weapon skin introduced here, there's another outfit this week that is a new take on a specific look, a physical feature that's making me suspicious, Jack. I think the reason they're holding on to Cap and Thor from Endgame, the two of them, is because the Cap skin I think is going to end up having the MCU shield, and I do think Thor is going to have the beard and the hair.
And why do you think that? Because of this marketplace. What was the skin that you're referring to?
So half of it is the fact that we get a new Cap shield. The other half is we get this hipster hardware store Thor that is giving him a beanie. I think the beard is just the standard stock beard, but like it is a modification that is completely different from anything we've seen so far. Yes, it's a hat, but like I don't know. We could get hair physics in here. We could extend that beard. I think it just give it a little more time. Why else would they be taking this much time for these two skins?
Is it telling that our excitement about this game is centered around the fact that they can redesign Cap shield or Thor's hair options?
Yeah, well, like I understand, yes, but also like I think that's just part of the fun of enjoying a superhero thing too, right? Like the costumes and the suit, that's always a super cool thing. Like even in the MCU, whenever we got to see a new character's suit for the first time, it's a huge moment. In like Civil War, when we saw the Ant-Man suit redesign, that was really cool. When we saw Captain America's suit redesign after the Avengers monstrosity, like there is an air to the, I guess, commodification and toyification, microtransactionification of superhero costumes. But yes, it is telling, like you're saying, for sure.
Yeah, that is a great point, though. That is a great point. Because I remember, like what you said for Civil War, just poring over that trailer, especially with SpiderMan in it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what SpiderMan looks like in the MCU now? Wow. So, yeah, I totally get that.
For sure. But, yeah, so currently for the steampunk set, which I'm with you, I do think looks cool. We got Hulk, Widow, Kate, and Thor in the shop this week. And like I mentioned also, we do have hardware. I think it's called Thor's Hardware Shop. It's Thor in a green beanie, a orange flannel, jeans, and like lumberjack boots. I kind of like it. I might get it. I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely is the most different looking Thor skin because it's like him and his civvies, but he has his beanie. So that's cool.
Love a good beanie, you know.
Oh yeah.
I also saw. I think Kate's iconic Young Avengers outfit is returning in the shop this week, as well as Captain America in like some Avengers campus white T-shirt, casual uniform. So
yeah, it looks like It looks like the outfit he was wearing when he was running around the Washington Mall.
Sure, yeah.
Just like a T-shirt, essentially, with the Avengers logo. So yeah, I feel like the marketplace is pretty good this week, especially with the team steampunk outfits. I like those a lot.
Yeah, and as of this recording, it is Friday. It's releasing Saturday. Tomorrow, just as a reminder, there will be the Square Enix Presents, which will feature War for Wakanda, a bunch of updates about the future of Marvel's Avengers, what's to come. And last week we did do extensive predictions on that as well as Guardians of the Galaxy. Those are still on the podcast feed for the show and the playlist on the YouTube channel. But as a quick reminder, I do think both of us are expecting to at least see some new skins, namely some endgame ones, come time for the show.
Yeah, I also think it could be possible for them. Do you know how like in the future months it says outfits inspired by the MCU and it's not like specific? Yeah. I think if they choose to go the specific route like they did with Endgame, they will reveal what versions they want to do. So like, hey, in the next month, we're going to be basing our skins off of this movie or this franchise or something like that.
Okay, I definitely could see that for sure. It would be nice for them to be vocal about it out the gate rather than like when the Widow skin was announced and the first couple leaked, it was like, so are they all Endgame or is it like a couple of them? But if you had to stake a claim, what do you think the next MCU line is going to be tied to?
Ooh, that's tough. Like you have to figure it might be an Avengers movie because that's just the easy route to do. I would say maybe the first Avengers and just get those out of the way because I I think we were both kind of expecting that to be, the first run, and they chose to go with Endgame, which was an interesting option. So
Yeah.
honestly, if they go Avengers 1, I think that would be an interesting play, a nostalgic play.
Yeah. I personally, I have a lot of issues with the movie, but like Age of Ultron, I think the hero outfits are not one of those issues. So like, would be really cool to see that. If I had to guess though, I would say Infinity War. Um, because at that point you'll be able to bring in skins for like Black Panther, who's coming to the game. Get his skin in there, or maybe even something like a Civil War, because then you would have Hawkeye as well,
Mm.
and Black Panther, who I feel like you want to have as many of the roster in that project as possible. So yeah, interesting stuff. One little rumor mill item I'll throw out there, since we are briefly discussing the future of the game, right? I saw Miller came back after a brief hiatus of doing some leaks. This was speculation and partly based on some inside stuff. Uh, Miller is saying that they believe Spider-Man will drop alongside Black Panther, which I think we discussed as maybe being an option either last week or before that, but you know, if Miller says it, even if it's speculation, I'm inclined to at least start to think that way. So would you be surprised if come late August, early September, we get T'Challa and Spidey?
That would kind of surprise me because, like, why release those two things at the same time? Because one obviously overshadows the other with Black Panther,
Mm-hmm.
and it just, like, I understand Spider-Man would only go to one audience, so it would really only affect that one console with PlayStation users. But I feel like even still, I'm a PlayStation user, and that's how I played the game. I'd rather just have my time with Black Panther, and then like maybe a month later have Spider-Man, just so Black Panther doesn't cannibalize the Spider-Man content.
Sure.
So that strikes me as a little odd. I don't know if we'll see that.
Yeah, I definitely get the logic of like drop this alongside a really exciting character that everybody's getting, so you don't have that narrative of like dead game. I hate this. Like any, there will be negativity that comes from Spider-Man dropping no matter what, but like I think masking that maybe. But you're right, it would also mask some of the events of Spider-Man because War for Wakanda seems huge. So with that though, moving on through the War Table blog this week, we got some updates. Multiplayer Mega Hives, Jack. They're almost done. They're almost here soon.
I'm so excited, Christian.
We're gonna run at least one, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
Because like
certainly will after this upcoming news.
yes, so I don't know if these are dropping in conjunction with each other, but we also learned from the blog this week that Mega Hives are cutting the required steps to complete in half, and they are keeping the same rewards.
Yeah,
Incredible
this
news.
that's like it's still like a niche thing within the game, but doing a Mega Hive is the easiest way to get exotic gear, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
cutting that requirement in half is pretty huge because I think we talked about it last week or maybe the week before that we were thinking maybe there's like 8 hives you have to go through. Maybe like
Yeah.
taking 2 of those off, or maybe having 8 hives still, but making the floor requirements like lesser in some regard. But cutting it in half, I don't think either of us expected.
Yeah, like, uh, because I remember they said they wanted to cut complete, like, the time to complete in half, and we didn't know how they would go about that. Like, making the objectives be things that you can achieve faster, straight up cutting out floors. Excuse me. But yeah, I think the cutting floors seems like the right answer. It's the simple, straightforward one. And you're right, like having a more guaranteed way or the same guaranteed way to get exotics just faster is just very good, especially for people who want to be chasing gear, even if it's not super exciting gear, but like the exotics are always going to be the best. So being able to run that, being able to find a more perfect build for my Thor to really get him to be a god is just a good news for everybody, I think. So,
Yeah, I actually jumped in to do one of the hives of the 8 mega hive,
okay.
and I was like, man, this takes forever. Just doing one hive takes quite some time. It's like 4 or 5, 6 floors, whatever it is.
Yeah, man.
And you have to do that 8 times. So, yeah, cutting that in half, good stuff.
Yeah, especially because you have to do it with like the way it works, you can't die, right? Or something like that. Like I haven't done it since I completed it the first time, and I've only finished it once, and I've sworn it off. But this is getting me excited, and it is nice to know, like you mentioned, the update will affect us when we play together because this modification is going to apply to the standard single player Mega Hive in the game currently and the upcoming multiplayer Mega Hive. So it's not going to be longer if you're playing with your friends. Most likely it will go by faster unless they're scaling it to have more enemy spawns or whatever. But overall, I think this is just very good news.
Yeah, totally good news.
So exciting stuff. Um, what's not so exciting though is a conversation that truly lives up to the segment title of Stark Realities. So
Wait, real quick. When you chose that Stark Realities, was
yes.
that in a negative connotation or just a nice way to have, this segment name? Because it, for more often than not, it has come down to a negative connotation, which I think is hilarious.
So it was a lot of things, right? Like I played probably like I think I played like 15 to 20 hours, maybe more of the beta, and I played Stark Realities a lot. Um and week 1 when I was writing the show notes, right? The just the structure of it all. I wanted a segment where we were like, okay, we can address the bugs here. We can talk about the problems. We can just get real for a second because I know we are both enjoying it, but there are some serious things that will probably have to just be discussed. I didn't think it was going to be a weekly topic, like a weekly segment. I thought it was going to be like, oh, once in a while, there's maybe some conversation that we don't want to have, but we should have. There's been something every week
Yeah,
since launch, but just kind of worked out.
great name. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. Gear 2.0 is not what we think it is. This is a conversation that the community has been having on and off in some capacity since Gear 2.0 was announced because we never really got good insight into what Gear 2.0 was. There's obviously an expectation that's introduced when you hear Gear 2.0, looking at the state of Gear in the game since launch, it being lackluster. But thanks to the dev streams that have been happening mostly every Friday, give or take a couple for instances where there's an event or a presentation coming up, the CD, I almost said CD Project Red, Crystal Dynamics has given some more insight into Gear 2.0 to set expectations in the previous weeks. Most of it is tempering of like, hey, all the changes coming to Gear 2.0 are going to be incremental. There's not going to be a singular moment where a switch is flipped and it's a completely reworked system, which I think there's a lot of stuff to say about this, but hearing that, Jack, seeing the title, Gear 2.0, hearing that it's not going to be a flip of a switch, what does this set your expectations as? Are you disappointed by hearing this? What's up with you?
Yeah, I'm very disappointed by this. Because we had a conversation about the potential of a sequel for this, or if Marvel's Avengers would just be the one live service Avengers game. And now this really kind of just makes me want a sequel over more content being added to this game after Black Panther. I just think there are so many changes that need to be made to the core foundation of this game. And I think gear was a big part of the system that needs to be changed because it's just not fun. And that's for like a looter shooter, or I guess just a looter for this game. That's pretty much the drive. You go in, you try and get gear to spec out your heroes and make them better. And that's supposed to be the most engaging part of the game, and it's just not right now. Like, I really don't care about gear whatsoever, and I'm sure the changes will be good going forward, but the fact that a big sweeping system level change of gear isn't coming just makes me less excited about the future in a way for this game, and just pushes me towards the fact that I would rather have a sequel that just builds upon this game even more and learns from the lessons and the failures in some regard of this game. And I think gear is a big part of that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I knew the gear in this game was never going to be like a Destiny, which is when I hear of like a looter or gear thing, Destiny's the gold standard in my eyes because with Destiny, like yeah, you have your heroics essentially, like you do in Avengers, but your attacks are your gear, you know? Like my Sunshot hand cannon is very different from uh Ace of Spades, which is a standard hand cannon. You know, like there are very different ways that I can play the game depending on which hand cannon I use. And in terms of just guns, there's like hand cannons, SMGs, sidearms, snipers, shotguns, scout. Like there's so much stuff in there that can make gameplay varied. And what's weird about Avengers is that I do think there is varied gameplay, right? Because you play Hawkeye, you play Iron Man, you play Hulk, you're going to have a completely different experience, different things to enjoy about it. And I think that is, besides the campaign, that is the game's strength. And I knew gear was never going to be that influential on like a active level. So the whole like passive buffs sort of thing, I don't necessarily have a problem with, but I do think that gear doesn't feel exciting, and for a looter, you need to find a way to make it exciting. I think finding a way to make it exciting is still achievable within this release. I don't think we need a sequel to make it exciting, but I just don't know how you would do that. Um, and hearing that it's going to be more incremental, it's like, okay, I'm not going to hope too much for anything wild out of Gear 2.0 whenever we officially reach the 2.0 mark. But yeah, if they just keep adding like new skill trees, honestly, or just keep adding new characters that play well and give some more cool earnable looks for the characters, I don't even know if I'd care about gear at all in the game. I really don't at the moment. And I want to ask you this, like both of us have put probably at least well over 200 hours into this game by now. Do you like think a secondary Gear 2.0 that we envisioned it would be when hearing the name Gear 2.0? Would that make you double your hour count, or like would that make you play more if you've already put all this time into it?
I don't think it would double my count, but I think it would have, if it like turned out to be what we expected, which I'm sure it wouldn't have, because that's how our expectations go with this game. But I think it would have made the base of going through a mission and like getting gear. I think that would just be more fun, and I think it would make the game. And I already enjoy the game enough as it is. But I think gear, like this game was built around being a looter, and I think in a large respect, it sort of failed at that, and it's just not engaging in that regard to the way you just described Destiny, which seems to have much more of an engaging loop to it, and is probably an unfair comparison because Destiny has had years to work on that and is probably the gold standard for looters, but still, I just don't think Avengers capitalized on that genre as well as it could have, and it just makes me think of, like, this just furthers my idea of wanting a sequel, because I feel like I would just want them to drop the looter aspect of a sequel and go more on multiplayer and all that. But if gear is just not working right now, then just scrap the idea of gear in the sequel and just start a new base, because the base of this game is being a looter, and I just don't think it works very well.
Yeah, I'd love to have a conversation with someone who has experience in the looter genre outside of Destiny? Because like Destiny is really my only place I can check in to have some sort of say on this genre. Like I played a little Borderlands, but Borderlands again, it's just the guns, and I don't think there's armor gear that you can get to modify your characters significantly. Um, but I'd want to talk to a big Diablo fan, right? Because like
Mm.
Diablo, from my very little knowledge of it, I don't think has like a staff you can get that you can toggle that into your weapon slot versus a wand, and that's going to make differences with how you play your character, right? I do think, from my understanding, Diablo is class based the way this game kind of is, of like your heroes being a class, where instead of this game's Captain America, Diablo 3 has a monk, and the monk has powers and skills you can earn from progressing through playing the game, and then gear in Diablo, which is the true gold standard, right? I just don't have experience with it. But gear in Diablo, I, to my understanding, is just buffs and debuffs and increased cooldowns and things like that, the way that this game's gear approaches that. So I just like, I'm having a hard time finding a way to articulate what I find lackluster about this game's gear, but we're all on the same page about it being lackluster.
Yeah, and I just read Paul Tassi's article. I think it was either today or yesterday. Um, and he sounds very similar to how the Avengers subreddit sounds. Like he's very much like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm not convinced that it's gonna last past Black Panther. And I think he mentioned that gear wasn't getting a substantial rework, and that was part of his reason. Like for gear to be so important to this game and just not be fun is very disappointing. And like I would just love a God of War esque gear system from the recent God of War where you just earn different like gear sets and you apply them, and you like imagine if like the Mark 85 had a certain it's good against like cryo enemies, and then a different Iron Man suit is good against like fire enemies or something, and you just go in and it's very situational based, and like that to me sounds like a really good system. That does not sound like it could be implemented into this game. That just screams a sequel to me, and I know I keep hammering it home, but that's what I really want at this point, because I feel like that is the opportunity for this game to find some really good new life.
Yeah, I think you're right, and the example you gave is I think a good avenue to go down, because earlier when you were talking about bringing up sequel for the first time, I was thinking of Ghost of Tsushima, right? Specifically Legends, the multiplayer mode, and in Ghost, all four classes play mostly the same. Like there's an archer, like everybody has a bow, but the archer is just better at using a bow. Everyone has a katana. Like they all play very similarly, and it's their abilities tied to the class that are slightly different, and those are like your heroics. And gear in that game is interesting because it's tied to like, hey, you can get a moon stance katana, so you can only use it in moon stance, so you'll be really effective against this, like the brute. When the brute shows up in the raid or the survival mode, like that's your dude to take down because that's what your gear's set on. And I really love that system in a multiplayer setting, but I don't know, like story wise or contextually, how you can make that system fit around the Avengers, who they are their powers. Like it's not a situation that I think is an easy thing to get out of. I think it's very hit or miss. Like we see several Marvel games that don't hit, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, if gear 2 or sorry, if the gear in this game in general was just gone and progression worked the same way just without gear, do you think it would be even significantly different than it is right now?
Not, I guess not really, because you and I already don't pay attention to gear. We have the gear we got, and anytime I get new gear, I just don't look at it anymore because I think it's overwhelming, and most of the time I'm scrapping it. And if you just had perk slots, I think that would probably just work very similarly. But I think, like I said, like that's the base of this game, and it's just not fun. And I don't know, even like taking it away wouldn't. I feel like that wouldn't even do too much,
Sure.
either. You know.
I mean, subbing in perk slots, I think, would be an interesting solution where, again, ghosts, your weapons and gear you earn have perks that you can reroll by dismantling gear you earn for materials to reroll them to get the stat you want. And I think that would be an interesting solution. And honestly, if that was what was in the game right now, if tomorrow we woke up, the gear was gone, and it was just like 3 perks per character that you can use resources on to roll and try and get the one you want, like, I don't know if it would be significantly different of a experience as like playing the game and noticing what's different, right? Because the gear doesn't show up on your character. The gear, when it drops, it's who knows what it's going to be. You know, recently they made some changes so it's higher level characters get higher level drops, but you know, like it just feels inconsequential at the end of the day. And I could see a world where just they put it on life support and they flesh out skill trees for another year of support for this game, but I could also see a world where they make the hard cut after War for Wakanda, like you were saying. So
Yeah, I feel like the idea of not having Gear 2.0 also just makes me worried for the future of this game because it doesn't sound like any huge systematic rework is coming aside from Gear 2.0. And there are some things that I think need to be changed in this game. That it just doesn't seem like that's coming. And the base of this game is good, but I don't know. I think it needs some major reworks that would get people back in, and I don't know if those are coming past War for Wakanda.
Sure. My final question I have for you. Do you think you like the gear grind? Like, if it was better, if it was more in line with what you hear people talk about for Destiny or even The Division, do you think you'd like that loop?
Yeah. I remember playing Destiny 1, and it was at launch, so I'm sure it's very different, but even still, I liked going after the higher numbers, and I feel like that system was, even back in 2014, was a little bit more clear than the Avengers is right now, and
more rewarding too.
More rewarding, yeah. And yeah, it was. There were more cosmetic items associated with gear, and it was there weren't like 3 paragraphs of text you had to read for each item, you know. So yeah, I do like the idea of a looter. I just don't think it was. I don't like how that base was used for this game and squandered in a large part.
Sure. Well, we'll see what changes come in the near future. We'll see what's announced at the Square Enix Presents this Sunday. As a reminder, Jack and I, alongside Kevin Diaz, will be reacting to it, watching the panel presentation live on youtube.com/joyclicks, where the video version of this podcast is hosted. So if you want to tune in for that Sunday, I will pull up the time by the end of the episode so we can just give another reminder at the end. But we'll see what awaits, and you can watch along with us and hang out in the chat. So be there for it. But meanwhile, we have one primer news story to lead into our big MCU discussion this week. Loki, the newest addition to the MCU, has the largest view count for episode 1 of all the Marvel shows so far. Jack, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's huge. I was seeing a lot of people speculate like why that is, and the best one that I saw was someone on my Twitter saying it wasn't. It could be the popularity of Loki over those other characters of Wanda, but I also think Captain America was probably drawing a lot of people. But they were saying that it's probably WandaVision drew people in, Falcon and the Winter Soldier drew people into Disney Plus, and then they retained their memberships, and now they have Loki, which makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I think that's great. I feel like WandaVision started off the Disney Plus MCU verse in a way very well. Got people a lot of intrigued with the formatting of releasing shows weekly again, and then sticking through it with Loki. So this is huge.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. That recap makes sense. As time goes on, more people will grow into the being subscribers. I'm sure the people who did sub for WandaVision stuck around to watch other Marvel stuff, and then I think the content strategy rollout they have is kind of ingenious. We've almost had Marvel MCU stuff every week, so if you're making a subscription service, especially people who are paying monthly, like suckers like me who didn't hop on that 3-year subscription that you swooped up last year, like,
oh yeah,
that's how you keep them, So
totally.
Very interesting stuff. I'm sure. Let's do this then. The next Marvel show is either Ms. Marvel or Hawkeye, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think episode 1 of that series will have a higher view count than Loki? Because we've been on an upward swing. Trajectory-wise, we're just growing for episode 1 of Wanda, Captain America, and now Loki. Do you think it continues to grow for the next episode premiere?
I'll say yes, because either one of those characters, just like how Captain Marvel was important and just like how Black Panther was important, it means a lot to women, because you're either going to have the Hawkeye show featuring Kate Bishop, or you're going to have Ms. Marvel. So there's that whole aspect of it, as well as, like what you said, the growing part of, retaining these subscribers, even though it will be a long time between Loki and whatever show ends up being next. I still think that you retain that. So yeah, I do think that it will probably be a bigger launch than Loki, which is cool.
Sure. And for those that are angry, I forgot this. I'm not counting What If. What If is a different beast, like
Yeah.
That I don't know how many people are subscribing for What If. I'm sure there will be some, but
that's like a dessert.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's move on to the main course, shall we? We're doing it backwards today. Loki, episode 1. Glorious Purpose. Excellent title.
Oh, yeah.
So, as we did with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as we did with WandaVision, we'll start out spoiler-free. This is on Wednesday now, so it's probably even trickier for people to get caught up on it when it immediately drops, but we'll do our best to avoid spoilers for the first few moments. General impressions, Jack. Episode 1 of Loki, series premiere. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it did a really great job of setting up the next 5 episodes of this show. I was going to be, and I feel like the majority of the audience would be very confused by what was going on with time and all that in this particular show, but they took the time for 50 minutes to explain what was happening, give you all the answers you need to know, and also set up Loki in a way that is believable to follow him over the next 5 episodes. So I think the premise of the show is really cool, and I am really interested to get more in depth of Loki's character. So yeah, I think this is a great episode. What about you, Christian?
Yeah, I was a big fan of it. I've always liked Loki. I think there's a lot of room for him to grow even still after Ragnarok, and sort of getting a reset in a way on him is exciting, because we get to see maybe him go down a different path, or maybe get to the same place we saw him in Ragnarok. And I think episode 1 sets up a lot of those questions really well in terms of setting the tone, finding a focus and a direction. I think this is the strongest episode 1 out of all the 3 shows so far, where I think WandaVision was really interesting, and we were all really freaked out what the hell's going on. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier was like, hey, this is getting back in the groove with Marvel. Loki feels distinct in a way that Falcon didn't out the gate and WandaVision did. It feels focused. It feels like we're not going to have a million questions every week, but there is a mystery behind it all. And I think it was a very, very strong episode 1.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And to your point about it being distinct, I love how this and WandaVision feel like they're in the MCU for sure, but also just feel like something totally different that we haven't seen before. And I love how the shows are taking that approach. And this is just another example like WandaVision where this is something new and it feels great.
Yeah, and not to just bring out the parade and praising the Marvel Studios, but like this is their 25th project, right? Maybe 26th, and we're having this conversation right now. Like, oh, it feels like it fits in perfectly, but it's just such a unique idea. It's really cool. Like that's still impressive to me. So
Yeah, and you could say that Falcon and the Winter Soldier felt like standard Marvel fare, and that's totally fine. It still was a really great show, but yeah,
yes.
I'm loving the very unique approaches to dealing with characters and dealing with. This is the first time we're really delving into a villain as the main character, and that is so interesting in the fact that we've already gotten a lot of character development with that character, and in a way that has regressed because of where we find Loki. But at the same time, that's always been there, and yeah, oh man, it's a really great opening to this season.
Yeah, so we'll dip into spoilers now. I want to start with something you just said of just highlighting a villain, right? Because I think in the Loki we've experienced so far, it's very clear that he did a lot of bad things and he eventually redeemed himself by the end of Ragnarok and Infinity War, and he just sort of found his way. I think it's really, really interesting how we're opening up with multiverses and everything because it gives us an opportunity to take a character we all know and love and allow them to maybe experience an abridged version of that character growth, but in an impactful way and set them up to be someone completely different. Because what took, let's say, Prime Loki, the one we've seen in the movie so far, what took Prime Loki a couple films, close to a decade to achieve, of realizing he's actually not a villain. He just is really messed up.
Insecure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In episode 1 of this show, we get Loki from 10 years ago having to accept that about himself because of Owen Wilson and his cool time magic. And by the end of this episode, we feel like, or at least I felt, that Loki's in a place where he's been humbled the way he was by the end of Ragnarok. And I'm curious to see a younger Loki who has reached that realization, what's next for him, you know?
Yeah, totally. And yeah, through the conversation with Mobius, Owen Wilson's character, he like just lets out that everything that he did in the Avengers and before that was because he was insecure. And I really liked having him. I know like some people sort of gave this aspect flack, but I feel like it's a good refresher and it's a good thing. It's a good aspect for Loki's character, but him looking through like his past and his future, the highlight reel essentially, and I really enjoyed how he looked at his scenes with Thor, and essentially like all he wanted was to be Thor's equal, and for him to see that, for him to realize that, is I think going to go a long way for his character in this particular show. And I don't feel like he watched that and he's like, okay, now I'm Loki from Ragnarok, but
Right.
I think he has an understanding of his potential the same way that Mobius probably saw that reel and realized the potential of Loki if he just was more reflective about himself.
Yeah, like what took, I'm not going to do the math. Let's say what took 6 years for him to shed that ego. I think at this point, like the ego has been shed. You know, he's still not perfect. He's not at a point where he is in Ragnarok, where he's ready to be selfless and be like a hero, I'd say. But the hang-ups he has, he checked him at the door when he went back into that room, you know, and he saw the rest of that stuff, and he's going to leave him there, I think, because we can still grow beyond that, but just it's an interesting point where it doesn't feel like we're regressing with him because he made that realization that he has in Ragnarok, you know? Like, you're right, it's not the same character with the same ideals and morals yet, but the triggering point for him in the Prime Loki character arc. Uh, we've seen it now. So what's next? How long does it take? I think that's what's exciting about it because in a way we're picking up where we left off with Loki, having that realization of what he could be, but we're also going to see like if he could do it differently, what would he do? And I think that's really exciting.
That's true. I also really like the idea that I think it was Owen Wilson who was saying this to him. I'm never going to call him Mobius. I'm always going to just call him Owen Wilson. Just throwing that out there. But he was like, you weren't supposed to be like the main hero of this. You were always supposed to be a motivator for other people to achieve greatness. And then they showed the Avengers. And I feel like this is a really good... And I just love how the MCU uses TV shows to delve into characters' psyches, and they're totally doing that with this show. For this show to just give Loki the motivation to become the hero, I feel like this is his opportunity to be the main character, quite literally, and to just go through that and the trials he'll go through in the show. So, yeah, it's I just feel like this is a really good setup to. I'm interested to see what his character looks like by the end of the show compared to where we found him at the beginning of Infinity War.
Yeah, absolutely. And we touched on it briefly, but like, yeah, very emotional episode. Low key is not like the right term for it, but it's very personal and intimate, right? Because a lot of the episode is just him accepting this world, seeing all these things, and then talking a lot, right? There's not much excitement behind it. There is that sort of mini chase throughout the TVA, but like a lot of it really takes place in that room and is introspective for him. So I did appreciate that a lot. And I didn't have a problem with him watching all the events that he lived through and will live through. I just thought it was funny that it's like that's exactly how we saw it. Like he's just watching the movie, Like I thought that was a little funny. Like the same camera angles, the same delivery. Like I thought that was a little funny. Obviously, they're not going to reshoot all those things, but there could have been a plasma screen TV there, with just a Blu-ray running inside of it.
Yeah, I agree. I also didn't have a problem with that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the TVA, because this seems to be the big driving force of this series. It's very weird. What was your initial impression of seeing it? Like seeing the offices and seeing the way the culture is there, I guess.
So immediately my thought was, this is fully operational 1970s Aperture Laboratories from Portal 2. Okay. With the oranges and the browns, and it has that aesthetic from the 1970s. And the TVA is just one of those, it strikes me as one of those organizations that just does weird things like what you mentioned. And Aperture obviously was, doing some weird experiments, but the vibe of TVA was just super strange and funny in a lot of ways, with the dude from The Mandalorian, who was like the receptionist. But yeah, it's really cool. I thought it was crazy how Loki found himself in 2012. Loki finds himself immediately after like the height of his power, and then going to this organization that immediately takes control of him, and that was really cool to see.
For sure, yeah. Just, like coming off of working for Thanos, and just getting stripped down, literally. Very interesting for his character. I do like the way that it doesn't seem like it's super busy, and like you get the vibe that like people don't hate their job, but they're just like tired maybe, and nothing phases them. I think that's kind of funny. Compared to just how ridiculous it is. They did make it, like, props to the set design. I think it looks very cozy, but also very boring in a way that I think is fun. Not like The Office boring, but like there's a warmth to it that I do like. And part of that weirdness comes from Miss Minutes, correct?
Yep. The mascot.
Yes, the Fallout-esque time pocket watch that is narrating what the TVA does, how they work. Uh, I watched this section like 3 times because they dump a lot on you at this point.
Yeah, they mentioned like a multiverse war that happened, and then the timekeepers stepped in and created the TVA and established the sacred timeline. Which, by the way, I think that's hilarious. Of just the sacred timeline is just a fourth wall breaking thing to call the MCU. Like that's just the normal timeline, and we're just calling it the sacred timeline now. I think that's great.
Yeah, so in this sequence, there's a couple things, Jack, that's making me think that I don't know if you were already thinking this, but I think Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is going to be as impactful on the MCU as Civil War was.
Mm.
Because like Civil War set up like 2 Avengers movies, led to all the stuff with the blip. Like Civil War in hindsight left way more waves than it felt like at the time. And thanks to WandaVision, Wanda being a Nexus being, the Scarlet Witch, uh, Loki coming a couple months later, referencing a Nexus event that will create a diversion in the timeline, which creates variance, which is a no-no for the timekeepers because it'll bring back the multiverse. It really feels like we're building to a point, especially like the rumors of Spider-Man No Way Home and what Multiverse of Madness. It's very tight-lipped right now. Like, I think Multiverse of Madness is going to be gigantic for the direction of where we go next.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking that this is predicting of where we're gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
Like we will. Miss Minutes was like, oh yeah, they prevented a multiverse war, and they created the TVA to prevent another one. So I think we're just gonna get another one, and I'm not the only person to have said this. This is not my idea, but if phase 1 through 3 is the Infinity Saga, then I have a feeling the next saga we find ourselves in will be the Multiverse Saga, and that is really cool.
Which is very interesting, yeah. And I wonder. I think there might be more to Ralph Boner also, you know,
Maybe.
because like Jamie Foxx, Electro, could be a Ralph Boner scenario.
Mm,
You know, maybe not like he's just a joke, but like he is Electro the way that Ralph Boner was Super Speedy.
sure.
So like I don't know, man. I think there's a chance we could see Hugh Jackman. I'm bringing it back.
I remember after Endgame being like, I just did not want to see the multiverse dealt with because I felt like it would bring up too many different uh, confusions. But the way that they're handling it this way, with them focusing like a war and like trying to vie for the sacred timeline, that has me intrigued.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to ask you then also because there's the timekeepers who created the TVA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Multiverse of Madness implies many things. Hectic. The multiverse actually comes to fruition, so the TVA failed. I'm imagining the timekeepers also failed. So if there's a multiverse of madness, let's say Wanda like erases the timekeepers by accident or something. Doctor Strange now no longer has the time stone. Does he ascend to become a timekeeper?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Right? Because like I feel like you nailed it, right? They are exactly predicting where we're going, I think. Like all these things are very important, I think, to the future. They're not going to be a quick throwaway aside the way some stuff in WandaVision was.
Yeah,
So,
like I'm wondering if Loki the show sets up a Nexus event, because like that seems like it would be something in the far distant future, like maybe in Doctor Strange, but also at the same time it appears that Loki and the TVA are trying to hunt down another Loki variant to prevent a Nexus event, and maybe that is unsuccessful, and that begins this multiverse saga. But I don't know. That'd be cool.
yeah. So I definitely think in the coming weeks we will be comparing a lot to some of the later episodes of WandaVision, trying to draw some comparisons. I've already seen it happening. Um, I did. Uh, I was watching this with Kayla, and in that intro scene with Owen Wilson's introduction, right in the church, there was the little kid who pointed at the stained glass. So they were like, "Oh, who did this?" And then it was a picture of a devil, and I was like, "Oh fuck, here we go again, Mephisto. It's gonna be back every fucking week." I'm sick of it already, but yeah,
They did confirm that Mephisto is not in this show.
yes, thankfully. But that it's not gonna stop these theorists.
No, I did hear. I think it was Jeremy Johns who was like, "Oh, that image was probably drawn after Loki's horns, and
Yeah,
people just thought he would look like the devil," which is cool.
for sure. Um, there were a couple other Easter eggs I've seen people discussing a lot. Do you want to hit those first before we get to the end of the episode?
Yeah, you tell me these because I don't think I picked up on these.
Okay, so again, Loki's introducing a lot of time stuff. People are likewise looking back to Avengers Endgame, the movie that introduced time travel to the universe. And it introduced it in its own weird, distinct way. I've seen a lot, Jack, a lot of people commenting on the way time is discussed and portrayed in this first episode, to the scene with the Ancient One talking about uh, the main timeline spewing off if you remember an Infinity Stone. That's a variant, and then it all goes to shit, right? So I haven't seen it enough times to understand the comparisons that are being drawn to that scene, but she draws a main timeline, and then it removes an Infinity Stone, and then one spews off the way that the Nexus event in the Missed Minutes video affects things.
Right, and they talk about there's like posters on the walls of the TVA wanting to clip the branches, and sort of cut those off and prevent them from doing some damage and messing with the sacred timeline.
Yes, so people are speculating that maybe the TVA isn't being completely honest. Maybe they have a bit more ulterior motives, because the Ancient One, when she was talking about creating a branching timeline, she said it's like going to be doomed. Horrible things are going to happen. So we know now the people that would correct it is the TVA. So, like, I don't know if that's something to keep in mind. But we also learned that the Avengers going back in time and fixing everything was part of the main timeline. So there's like a bubble. Like the Avengers Endgame stuff happened the loop that happened in Avengers Endgame is a small enough loop that it does not go outside the boundaries of the main timeline, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the way I think of it was that it was just supposed to happen. That was always supposed to happen.
Yes, and I've seen people taking issue with that. Logistics. This is, for the people who like throwing plot holes around, this is an inconsistency. This would not be a plot hole. So, like, it's a conversation that I don't think is fully developed yet. We'll definitely get there, but the reason for a lot of that discourse I've seen is because of Captain America. Like, why did Steve Rogers get to go back and live a life with Peggy in the prime timeline, the sacred timeline, with no consequences? The conversation leading to it was always meant to happen. When we were watching The Winter Soldier, there was an old Captain America who was married to Peggy, who was just hiding somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's what's being implied now. There are a lot of people that don't like that, and I think that's where some of it stems, but
I think the writers or maybe the directors of Endgame were like, nah, there was never a second Steve, but all signs point to that, right, of them not showing her husband from Winter Soldier or Civil War in like any photos or whatever. So yeah, I think if you think more about the TVA, then it's just going to lead you down that hole of why didn't they show up here, or why didn't you show up there? In my head is just the simplest explanation is that everything was supposed to happen, and if they show up, it wasn't supposed to happen. I don't know the rules. Maybe like what you said, we do find out some more concrete rules, And even I forget the character's name, but the woman who had Loki on trial, she was like, it's more than just good and bad or right and wrong. There's more nuance to it, and like obviously Thanos happened, and that's clearly bad, but that was technically supposed to happen. So yeah, I wonder if we get any more insight into what does that even mean? So what's things that are supposed to happen, things that aren't supposed to happen.
Yeah, and I've seen also a conversation of people like being upset, like why should we be invested at this point if everything that happens is supposed to happen? But like that to me is the same kind of complaint of like, well, why doesn't Batman just give money to Gotham? It's like, man, there's no story that way. Like, what do you
Yeah.
want? Like, yes, he's probably not a great person for being a full-blown philanthropist. Like, there's a reason that we have to have events a certain way to tell a story in them. I understand, but like, I think if you want to be upset about something, be upset that Loki's not dead. But even then, I think it's warranted. We're already doing new, cool, exciting things with this character and the world. So
Yeah. And to me, it's interesting, like, from a religious background, it's just predestination
yeah,
and that sort of idea. So that's interesting to me. And some people thinking that predestination or destiny is a thing, and, like, there's always something that you're supposed to do. You just sort of don't realize it, or free choice. And, yeah, just the idea of both of those things is interesting to me.
yeah, and I really love that that was the main topic in the background of this episode, just as the undercurrent, because that the title of the episode, Glorious Purpose, is pulled from that speech that Loki gives where he's talking about like freedom being life's greatest lie. So like he gets pulled into this and he's upset that he doesn't have the freedom to make choices of how his life plays out, but that's what he wanted to take away from people. I really loved that. They didn't really like directly make that comparison, but I'm glad that that's sort of the main beat that we are focusing on with him to sort of get him to listen.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool. But I mean, I know you were on top of the theories for WandaVision. Do you think you're going to be doing that weekly for Loki?
Probably not, because I don't like how some of the breakdowns and stuff sort of teased upcoming things and sort of painted my expectations in a way. So I'm probably not going to be following along as much as I did for WandaVision, just because I like to go into things fresh and not have any, you know, any thoughts that aren't my own personally.
Sure, yeah. That being said, I did see somebody say in the background when Loki first uses the teleporter and he gets thrown into that hallway and he's like looking around. In the background, we see one of those blurry time doors open, and a TVA member walks through with a woman who looks suspiciously like Peggy Carter. So I've seen people saying, again, is that a consequence? Is that the Agent Carter, Peggy Carter? Because now that show maybe not be canon. Like,
And Kevin Feige's like, sorry, we gotta get you out of here.
yeah, man. What if
Daredevil.
yeah, what if Matt Murdock, what if Charlie Cox shows up? Like the rumors are true, he's back in the MCU, but he just gets taken by the TVA.
Oh,
It's
man.
like no.
We gotta clip the branches, and that's
Yeah.
a branch.
So,
You're not part of the sacred timeline anymore.
oh man.
That's what a great fourth wall breaking thing to just. Sorry, yeah, the Sam Raimi trilogy not part of the sacred timeline until it is.
Yeah, Kevin Feige was smiling when he saw that line. He's like, "Oh, the sacred timeline, the one
Yeah.
I'm in charge of. I'm the timekeeper, aren't I?" Yeah, there's a lot in this episode. Like, I think the most impressive thing for both of us sounds like it was the character growth, but there's a lot of wacky, weird shit that could be spewed off in a million different ways. Like, that could have implications for things. That could just be fun Easter eggs. Like, outside of what we discussed so far, was there any other major standouts for you aside from the ending tease of the second Loki?
Yes, I really loved the music of the show. I think it was a really good balance of, I feel like a lot of the reason, aside from the visuals and just having an organization that does some pretty questionable things, I feel like the reason I thought of Aperture Laboratories is because the music sounded very Portal-esque in a way, like when Loki was looking out at the city surrounding the TVA. There were some really interesting music choices there, but also it was a really good combination of that and some more like Thor sounding music when he was looking at the highlight reel of his life. So yeah, I think the music was really on point in this episode.
Yeah, I agree. It was emotional when it needed to be, and it definitely helped define that the vibe we were talking about earlier for the TVA.
Totally.
Also, very quickly, the DB Cooper joke bit was very funny. I thought like he lost a bet to Thor, and that's why the myth of DB Cooper was created.
Yeah, that was good. And yeah, and it perfectly explains what happened with DB Cooper
Yeah.
of Loki being DB and then just getting sucked away. And the real life DB Cooper, no one knows what happened to him, but turns out he was just an Asgard the whole time. So that's, yeah, really funny.
Good bit. So let's talk about this other variant of Loki that is existing, truly being the god of mischief right now. Uh, a third Loki, technically.
Hmm.
It is heavily rumored, I think, that this is Lady Loki, because I think we knew as one of the pitches, or maybe even an official casting thing, that Lady Loki was going to be part of the show. We were going to be getting a lot of multiverse, alternate reality things of certain things we're familiar with, but Loki in the comics is, and Norse mythology is gender fluid, so whatever he feels like being, he will be. Um, I think the way they might end up justifying is that like this is Loki from like 200 years ago when Loki was a woman. I don't know, but
Okay.
do you think that it could be anything else?
I think it is probably Lady Loki, like what you were saying. Also, there was a trailer that looked like Loki was talking to Black Widow, and everyone was like, "No, that's probably Lady Loki." So that's just where my head is at as well. When you put this in the doc, it made me think that, like, I know we're getting a Loki season 2. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if Tom Hiddleston's coming back. I don't know if that's confirmed. If it's not, it's very possible. There's been a lot of torch passing in the MCU. It's very possible that the character of Loki remains the same, and we have a new actor or actress playing that character, and that we could see that potentially from season 1 to season 2.
Interesting.
So yeah,
Yeah, that could be cool. I'm really interested to see them have a scene together at some point. Like, I'm sure there's gonna be some sort of like, join me, and we can like become the most powerful god of all, and have that sort of pull for him to go back to where he was at the beginning in like 2012. But definitely curious to see where we go with this because it's a cool concept. And 6 episodes, I imagine there won't be any filler. Um, if this first episode is anything to judge by, but yeah, overall, really strong first episode and a lot of really exciting things for the MCU and the character of Loki. So, do you have any final words, any final thoughts to run through for this episode?
yeah. Like what Owen Wilson said, I want to see more mischief from Loki.
Mm,
He was like, "Oh, all this is like just sort of violent. I haven't seen a lot of mischief from you." I would love to see. I mean, you got a whole show dedicated to the character. I would love to see some interesting uses of his powers and what he does to define himself as the god of mischief. And we saw it like a little bit. This was even still more violent, but with Lady Loki or whoever the Loki was at the very end of the episode, set a trap of oil, and then everyone thought they were just using it to get rich, going back in time, and tricked him and set him on fire. So it doesn't have to be as violent as that, but maybe a nice face swap like what we saw with Cap and Thor: The Dark World, or something more elaborate would be really cool.
definitely, yeah. I think that's a great point, and hopefully, Loki can absolutely be playful, and I think he's been pretty comedic in a lot of his appearances so far. So more of that would be great as well. Um, I really liked how he played off of Owen Wilson. Honestly, like that was surprising me, and I know some people have been saying like, oh yeah, they're people who have seen the show already, like a couple episodes of the show, have really been selling their relationship. So excited to see more of that. I do hope by the time we see credits on episode 6 and that post credits, I hope we at least get one wow. But
we need a wow. Wow.
Will we get a ka-chow?
We certainly won't get a ka-chow, but a wow I think is very reasonable. That's a reasonable request.
Sure, because like people say wow, it doesn't have to be. It can be a subtle one, but just a wow, just a wow.
I think we will. Like even just like a, wow, can't believe you did that. Something like that.
Yeah, what I'm really hoping for is that Loki does that cool hologram thing that he always does, and Owen Wilson's just not impressed, and he's just like, wow.
That would be great.
That's what I hope for.
That's good fan service right there.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I wanted to leave off on with Owen Wilson was we have another instance in this household of a Robert California situation where someone who will remain nameless right now, but if you know, you know, sees Owen Wilson acting and just sees Jedediah, the tiny cowboy from Night at the Museum.
That's totally fair.
Yeah, but yeah, overall great first episode.
Nice.
So, that is episode 1 of Loki. That is the final pre-E3 thing. I did check for sure. The Square Enix show for Marvel's Avengers is 12:15 Pacific and 3:15 Eastern. We'll probably be live, I'd imagine at least 15 minutes before that happens. So, look forward to that. Once again, if you want to hang out and watch what's new for Marvel's Avengers and see that Guardians of the Galaxy game, are we going to have to do a rebranding? TBD, we'll see. But Jack, in the meantime, where can everybody find you?
Sure, you can follow me on Twitter at FascinatedJack. And I'm very excited for this show for the Guardians of the Galaxy to just kick the Avengers out of the way and just take over Excelsior. I'm excited.
Yeah. Hell yeah. And yeah, next week we'll be back with a recap of the Square Enix presentation as well as episode 2 of Loki. But in the meantime, like we mentioned, we'll be live for reactions to that presentation. You can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at Chun2D2, as well as here, youtube.com/joyclicks for the video version of this show in the Excelsior playlist, alongside all of our other shows and all of our other E3 coverage and reactions and content. You can check that out. If you want the audio version of the show, though, you can check it out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just look up Excelsior or Marvel's Avengers. It will pop up. I'm going to have to add Guardians of the Galaxy to the show description so we can start getting up there for that, too.
Yeah, get those keywords. Get the SEO going.
Get that SEO. We got to plan ahead. We were the #1 Avengers podcast because we got in early. That's what's important, Jack.
Yeah, we're gonna have a 3-year gap between this announcement and the release, and we're gonna have it covered.
Oh, absolutely. And I covered the audio feed. Patreon.com is the other thing. Patreon.com/joyclicks if you want to support the shows on a monetary level. The $1 and $5 tiers. $5 tier will get you producer credit for this show and every show we do, like Chris Sakis, Aaron Easton, and Charles Applin. So thank you very much. And that's gonna do it. So, Jack, this is our final moments before E3. One last thing you want to put out into the world, the sacred timeline. What are you manifesting? Honestly, maybe just go wild with it if you want to. Create a Nexus event. Let's kick off this multiverse early. What is the one thing you want to throw out there before Square's E3?
All right, so we're getting Black Panther. That's all well and good. Maybe even SpiderMan. Sure, that's a dessert. And then they just come out and say, you know what? We're going to detail all of year 2. Here you go. Roadmap year 2.
Excellent. Give me one highlight from year 2. Just one.
We get on February, it's Valentine's Day, the month of love. We get Bucky Barnes and Captain America go on a date. They hit the town in Manhattan. And it's called A Lover's Journey. Captain America and Bucky Barnes.
That one can only be a high power level mission, and we will never forget it.
That's right.
Perfect. Well, look forward to that, and until next time, Excelsior.
Excelsior.